Thank you. As I said, there's no need of you recording the meeting because I'm recording it, the audio portion only, and it will be shared on Narnon Ontario's website, and you'll find it under podcasts. We also ask that everyone or anyone, if you only use your first name and your last initial, or you can put where you are, that's great too, but please only use your first name. If you need help renaming yourself on screen, we can help you do that. And so to avoid any background noise, please remember to mute your microphones unless you are sharing. So let's now take a moment of silence for the friends and family members who have not yet found the rooms of Naranon, and we will follow that with the Serenity Prayer. Serenity Prayer. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Since we are a virtual meeting, please let's honor each other's presence fully as if we're gathered together in the same room. If you can't be fully present for everyone or for all of the meeting, we welcome you to remain, but please turn your video off and mute your audio to keep distractions at a minimum. This includes when you're smoking or vaping. And now we're going to open the meeting with a few of our readings. So I'm going to share my screen again. And I'm hoping that we have some newcomers here. Can I get a volunteer to read the newcomers welcome?
I can do that if you like, Lisa.
Well, I would like, thank you. Go ahead.
All righty. The Narnon Family Group is primarily for you who know or have known a feeling of desperation concerning the addiction problem of someone very near to you. We have traveled that unhappy road too and found the answer with serenity and peace of mind. When you come into the family group, you are no longer alone, but among true friends who understand your problem as few others could. We will respect your confidence and anonymity as we know you will respect ours. We hope to give you the assurance that no situation is too difficult and no unhappiness is too great to be overcome. Our program, which is not a religious one, but a spiritual way of life, is based on the 12 steps of Narnon. We have found that the working of these steps will bring the solution to practically any problem. We urge you to take this program and its 12 steps seriously. It has been as helpful to us as the Narcotics Anonymous program is to the addict. We only ask for the wisdom and courage to see ourselves as we really are, to do something about ourselves with the help of a higher power as we understand this, and for the grace to release our addicts with love and cease trying to change them. Keep an open mind and attend as many meetings as possible. Feel free to share during the meeting. You may ask questions after the meeting. You will soon make new friends and will feel very much a part of the group. With the understanding that addiction is a disease and the realization that we are powerless over it as well as over other people's lives, we are ready to do something useful and constructive with our own. Then and only then can we be of any help to others. Thanks for letting me read.
Thank you, my friend. Okay, can I get a volunteer to read the 12 steps?
I can do that, Lisa. Cheryl.
Okay, I got 3 people. So how about Cheryl, you can read the 12 steps, and Betty and Ray, why don't you split the 12 traditions? So Betty can do the first 6 and Ray can do the next. How's that? Great. I can't see you.
Okay.
And I'll just
The 12
assume
steps of Narnon family groups. 1, we admitted we were powerless over the addict, that our lives.
Am I frozen or is she frozen?
Cheryl's frozen.
it must be Cheryl, yeah.
She's still frozen.
Okay. Ray,
Ourselves into another.
oh, she's back. Okay, we lost you there for a minute, Cheryl.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Go ahead. Start over.
Oh, yes. I'm getting a message that my internet connection is unstable.
Well,
Okay. Can you hear
sounds
me
good
now?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, I'll go back to 4. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5. Admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6. We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7. Humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. 8. Made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9. Made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10. Continued to take personal inventory and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. And 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to others and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Thank you for letting me read.
Thank you, Cheryl. Okay, Betty, the first 6, and then Ray can do the next 6.
Our group experience suggests that the unity of the Narnon family groups depends upon our adherence to these traditions. Number 1, our common welfare should come first. Personal progress for the greatest number depends on unity. 2, for our group purposes, there is but one authority, a loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants. They do not govern. 3, the relatives and friends of addicts, when gathered for mutual aid, may call themselves a Naranon family group, provided that as a group they have no other affiliation. The only requirement for membership is that there be a problem of addiction in a relative or friend. 4, each group should be autonomous, except in matters affecting other Naranon family groups or NA as a whole. 5, each Naranon family group has but one purpose, to help families of addicts. We do this by practicing the 12 steps of Naranon, by encouraging and understanding our addicted relatives, and by welcoming and giving comfort to families of addicts. 6, our family groups ought never to endorse, finance, or lend our name to any outside enterprise, lest problems of money, property, and prestige divert us from our primary spiritual aim. But although a separate entity, we should always cooperate with Narcotics Anonymous.
7, every group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. Tradition 8, Naranon 12-step work should remain forever non-professional, but our service centers may employ special workers. Number 9, our groups as such ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible for those they serve. 10, the Naranon family groups have no opinion on outside issues. Hence, our name ought never be drawn into public controversy. 11, our public relation policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, films, internet, and other forms of mass media. We need guard with special care the anonymity of all NA members. 12, anonymity is the spiritual foundation of our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles above personalities. Thank you for letting me read.
Thank you very much. And Pam, if you could read today's sesh that I will put up here in a second.
January 31st, the 3 C's. The 3 C's are similar to talismans. Their magic and power are available for me at the right moment. When I accept that I didn't cause it, I can't control it, and I most certainly can't cure someone else, I feel serenity. I have over 15 years in a 12-step program. My partner has a child who is in active addiction. I find myself wanting to save my partner from suffering by trying to fix the addict. Indirectly, I would be saving myself as I am greatly affected by my partner's moods. When my partner is sad, I am depressed. My instinct tells me that I need to practice a new way of life. It was suggested that I could learn a better way to live in Naranon. Before Naranon, I would try to fix the addict. I realize now that what I wanted was to make my partner feel better. I would make myself physically sick because I thought I had to be in control of my partner's feelings. I felt that the way to do that was to help her addicted loved one. I felt compelled to fix both situations. I realized that my involvement was putting my recovery in danger. My life was in complete chaos. Today, I am learning to apply the 3 C's in a new way and learning to keep the focus on me. I am now feeling more peace and serenity and less anxiety. Thought for today: I will place myself in the loving arms of my higher power. I know that with my higher power's help, I will make it. I will hold tight to the 3 C's and let them take me on a safe journey. I only have the power to control myself. And the quote: we do not need to search in order to find our true being. We already are it. And the mind which searches for it is the very reason why we cannot find it. Roy Wenery. Thank you for letting me read.
And thank you very much, Pam. Okay, so tonight, as you know, it's Ontario Speak. So we have 2 speakers tonight. We have one that was on the poster. Unfortunately, she is quite ill, so we were able to find someone to take her place. But tonight we have our good friend Sandra, who's going to speak for us. And you go right ahead, Sandra,
Thanks.
and we'll give you 20 minutes or so since Luke is coming. If that
it.
works.
No, yeah, that works.
That's all you
That
get.
works. That works. Hi everyone. So glad to be here. My name is Sandra, and my son is who brings me to these rooms. It's been a while since I did Ontario Speaks, I think a year or two, and a lot has happened in my world. And I'm here to share my experiences and how Narnon has literally saved my life. In the beginning, my son was 13 years old, I guess. Actually, before that, when he was in grade 3, he had problems in school, ADHD, he had learning differences. So his struggle started in grade 3. And it wasn't until he was about 13, he discovered weed. And I remember him coming home from school, and I could tell right away because I remember in high school smoking weed in the eyes. So I asked him about it, and I said, buddy, you look like you're high. And he goes, yeah, I just smoked a bit of weed. I'm like, why is that? And he's like, that made me feel better. And I just still remember that to this day. That's over 10 years ago. It made him feel better. Skip ahead years, I totally understood it, but the sad thing, it escalated from there. There's a question of whether weed is a gateway drug or not. That isn't for me to say. I can only share my experience, but I know that at that time, his behavior started changing right away. He became aggressive, angry, and it just escalated from there. And I thought, wow, weed didn't do this to me when I was in high school. Like was a totally different feeling. So, skip ahead, it got really bad. He started to even threaten me. I'm looking back at some notes, and there was a time when he even said, I'm going to stab you in the face. And, he was just so aggressive. He was 6 feet tall already at this point, so he towered over me. And I got to say, he did lift his hand once, but he didn't actually physically hurt me in any way. But that being said, it wasn't just the violence and the destroying and the holes in the wall and all that stuff. It was the fear he's going to ask me for money, and if I don't give it to him, he's going to freak out. So at this point, I'm giving him money just to shut him up. And so skipping ahead, I finally I thought, this is beyond me. And he was on a waiting list to go see a psychiatrist. And so, I shared with the psychiatrist what's been going on. And at that point, I'm blaming other people. This isn't my son. There was a neighbor boy, that was smoking weed and doing drugs. It's his fault, right? And so the psychiatrist kind of agreed with me. And he said, well, you have to get him out of the area. And so his dad and I were divorced. I'm in one region and his dad is in another. So it's like, okay, move him to his dad's place. And, and I want to say right now that our relationship, my relationship with my son, Ben, was not a relationship. We couldn't be in the same room. We couldn't talk to each other. I'm sure you all know about the eggshells, walking on eggshells, being afraid to say something. It was horrible. So he moved off to his dad's, and I'm thinking, okay, good. I'm out of here. Like, I don't have to deal with that. But then I started seeing what was happening at his dad's house, and it got pretty bad. You know, all of a sudden his dad has more holes. Like when he would punch a hole in my wall, I wouldn't let it go. I made him fix it. He worked with my partner trying to fix the hole, or cleaning his room. I made sure he cleaned his room. And I'm not blaming his dad with how he dealt with the situation with Ben. He dealt with it the way he knew how to deal with it. Well, because he didn't really deal with it, garbage, holes in the wall, broken stairs, broken floors. The garage became a drug den. It just escalated. Here we're thinking we're moving him out of the area here where he lived to a better place, getting away from the drugs. Well, no, it got worse. And it wasn't just weed anymore. We did find him a high school there. He ended up dropping out of high school. And it went on and on. And it wasn't until, he got arrested. He got arrested and he had to go to court. But, this is all pre-Narnon. Once he moved to his dad's place, I started to talk to him a bit more. I was still in the fix it mode. I can fix this. This is, this addiction. Like if he just makes his mind up, he can quit. If I can get him into a treatment center, he can quit. The whole shebang. And so there was one point where he needed to pay off a dealer. It's like, I need $200. I know I have $200 in my bank. If you just give me the $200, I need to pay, because if I don't pay him, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. And, as I learned years later, they're really master manipulators. And so at that point, I'm thinking, okay, well, you know what? I'm not enabling because I'm not giving him my money. I'll take the money out of his account. And it's like, okay, Ben, I'll give you the $200, but I'm not giving it to you. I want to see you give it to the dealer. Like I was doing something miraculous. So we meet the dealer and the dealer's outside on his side of the car. And I pass the $200 to Ben. He gets out of the car. The windows rolled down because it's summertime and I'm sitting there listening. And I could hear the dealer saying, okay, man, like we're good now. Like if you want anything, we're good. And I'm sitting there thinking, what the F am I doing? Like, okay, maybe it's not my money, but here I am witnessing this. And it took everything in me not to get out of the car, to say, leave my son alone, as if that was going to cure everything. Like if that dealer would just get out of his life, like he won't have a problem. Skip ahead. Everybody knows here the insanity, becoming the private investigator, putting myself in danger, following a couple of sketchy guys because I couldn't find my son. I was supposed to meet him. They're going behind a dumpster. I do a U-turn in an 8-lane road to follow these guys, and they're using needles there. But I'm Mama Bear. I need to find my son. I just think back at the insanity and all the things that I did. So I did the investigating, help him pay off the dealers. He drops out of school. He's in his dad's place. And then he gets arrested, as I said. And it wasn't until he was arrested that things kind of started to change. I mean, I was still trying to fix it. I was driving him to the courthouse and, made sure he got into the mental health diversity program. And, it's not like he was dealing with the full consequences because I was still there. I still hadn't found Narnon at this point. I was going to educationals. I didn't know about Narnon at this point. So I'm all about educating myself. I went to addiction workshops. I learned the effects of marijuana on the brain and all this stuff. And then he gets arrested. And he got arrested because, he had to feed his addiction. He was car hopping, he was dealing, you know. And then what changed was that he ended up getting a social worker from CMHA. And that really changed everything, because then I had somebody to talk to about the situation. And that's when I started learning different things, that, what, when there's, behaviors, there are consequences. If you don't feel the consequences, then the behaviors are going to continue. And I thought, wow, that's brilliant. That makes so much sense. Because if I'm going to keep fixing it, you're not going to learn anything. So little seeds started being planted in me. And so it's like, okay, I get this. I'm learning. And so, as time goes by, he's meeting with his social worker. And his social worker saw the state of his dad's house and thought, oh my gosh, this is inhumane. Like, it got so bad. And during all this, Ben started overdosing. So of course, when you overdose, it's like, oh, I'm mama bear. I have to get to the freaking hospital. My baby boy. And the phone would ring. He's in the hospital. I wouldn't even think twice. I'd rush out. Get there, revive. They revive him, they release him. They revive him, they release him. And in between all this, the chaos in his dad's house is out of control. His social worker finds a place for Ben to go, a transitional home, and to get him out of that atmosphere, a transitional home where there's supports, there's addiction support, there's mental health support, there's a roof over his head. And I'm thinking, yeah, let's get him in there. He's got to get out of this environment. So he did. I think he was about 18 at this point, maybe 19. So this was the last time he lived with his dad or I. He went to this transitional home. A week into it, he's kicked out. He had like some major overdose. He had a shit ton of drugs, excuse my language, that they found in his room, which is not good for the other clients that are living there. And he was in the hospital for about a week or two. And during that time, it's like, well, where's he going to go? He's not coming to my house. He's not going to go back to his dad's. And I had to bring him to a shelter. And I thought that was the hardest thing I ever had to do, bring my son to a shelter. At this point, that was the hardest thing I ever had to do. So I drop him off at the shelter, and he was able to go back to the transitional home like a couple months later or something. So shelter was not a good place, violence, drugs, etc. Went back to transitional home. I'm sure a lot of you could relate to all the chaos. So skipping ahead, he's there, he's using, my relationship with Ben is starting to change because I'm learning different things. And he was overdosing so much. We were already joking, like he's like one or two cats, always overdosing, 9 lives times 2. And what we noticed is when we were going to the hospital, we were treated differently. We recognized there was a stigma attached to the addiction. And so, at this point, we're having more conversations. And when Ben was in the hospital, I would try to engage him in conversation, say, I'm writing a book, Ben. Like, who would you have play your part in the movie if it becomes a movie? And it was just a way to try to make conversation, because I'm sure all of you have had those points where you're with your loved one and you don't even know what to talk about because you don't want to trigger anything. You don't want to, break those eggshells. And so I would reach for anything to talk to him. So he ended up from there moving, and after the transitional place, we found him a room to rent in an apartment with a bunch of other guys, and he was clean and sober. And we discussed, we got to do something about the stigma. So that's when we started a YouTube channel, sharing our experiences, trying to remove the stigma. And, it gave me an opportunity to talk, because he may have had an addiction problem, but his heart was huge. He wanted to help others. He always had that in him, helping others. And so I'm going to take that and run. So we did that. And And then shortly after, I discovered Narnon. And Narnon just opened up here in Georgetown. And I'm like, I kept hearing a little bit here about a Narnon thing. What, it's supposed to be like Al-Anon, because it wasn't really out there. And this was pre-COVID, of course. This was 6 years ago. And it's like, oh, okay, let me check this out. So I went to my first meeting. I'm thinking, oh, I love this. I loved it right away. I wasn't looking for answers on how to fix my son because I already knew that that was out of my control. But what I love the most out of Narnon is that it's not even about our addict. It's about us. It's about our self-care. It's about taking care of me. And so it was like this, the angels were singing, oh, Narnon. And it was like, ooh, I like this. I like me. I like this. Forget the focusing on Ben. We can still have our conversations, but when I started looking in the mirror and you're doing the steps and oh yeah, I have defects. I didn't think I had defects before this. I didn't think I had a control issue, but then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, oh I'm a little defective, but we can work on that. We could, it gave me a totally different focus. I learned not to ask the questions, and I discovered when I didn't ask questions, that is when he shared. I'm like, whoa, whoa. And I learned not to react. And so, I didn't realize how serious, even though he was overdosing and stuff and things were happening and I was being deprived, I didn't ever realize how serious the problem was until one of the hospitalizations. He was in the hospital and he wasn't just in the ER, he was actually on the cardiology unit because his heart was damaged. And so I remember talking to the doctor and the doctor says, they found morphine and fentanyl in his system. And I'm like, whoa, fentanyl. I've heard of fentanyl. That is serious stuff. Because I never associated those overdoses to fentanyl in the past. It was just he did too much. Like I was still learning. So I'm like, wow, morphine and fentanyl. So I went to visit him in his room and I said, buddy, I said, do you know what they found in your system? And he's like, I don't know, tell me. They found morphine and fentanyl. And he said, oh, I thought I was using heroin. Oh, inside, I'm like, oh, okay, the big H word, heroin. Oh, what the F? Like he thinks he's using heroin. Meanwhile, there's fentanyl in his system. But that was the beginning of my transition into working on me. Because I didn't say, oh my God, what were you thinking? You thought you were doing heroin. Inside, that was happening. But outside, I'm like, ooh, wow, Ben, that's scary. You think you're doing one thing, yet you're doing another. Like, that's scary. And he's like, well, yeah, blah, blah, blah. But I think that was like a really big point in our journey because of the way I didn't react. Because then he was comfortable sharing because he wasn't going to get that lecture. He wasn't going to hear me say, well, if you would only do this or this or this, like, come on, man. Like, and I learned I have to meet him where he's at. And part of that was learning different ways for me to keep sane. So, I learned about harm reduction. I never knew what harm reduction was. So harm reduction is there's medically assisted treatment like methadone and not naloxone, but all the other different mats. And at one point, because he was overdosing so much, at one point he met a crisis worker at the hospital and she would meet with them and she had a brother who was an addict. And what helped him was replacing all that stuff. And this worked for him. And, everybody's journey is different. What works for one doesn't work for others. But I'm just sharing what we learned is that he started to smoke weed and that alleviated the need to go use the harder stuff. So I was open to it. I'm like, oh, Ben, this sounds like a great idea. Like, so, I helped him roll little pinners of like little joints to have and I was still controlling at this point because of transitional time so that he would have his weed. And you know what? It worked for a while. It worked for a while. And then, it didn't. And that's what happened. So, harm reduction is, I think, really important, though, I started giving him naloxone kits. We talked about not using alone. We talked about how, I need him to stay alive, to get to the point where he wants help and he wants treatment. And that's a big part of it. Like, if it was up to me, he would have, went to treatment and he would have learned and gotten tools and gotten a job and did all that stuff. But it wasn't up to me. It was up to him when he was ready. He had all those rock bottoms. He was blind at one point because of what he was taking. He was paralyzed. He overdosed. Like I said, in his addiction over the years, oh, okay. Oh, I better wrap it up. So, I don't know what I said now. Anyway, that's okay. Yeah. Okay, I'm so like lost and okay, but that's okay. I'm back. I am going to wrap it up, but I can go on and on. And the important thing is that I learned boundaries, which he might not have liked, but he respected them. He would, like, if he started yelling with me yelling to me, he knew I was going to hang up, so he would hang up before me. Asking for money, he'd be pissed off because you won't even give me a freaking dollar. I'm like, no, because if that dollar took your life, I couldn't live with it. And this is how I'm going to end it. My son passed away last July of an overdose. But I want to tell you that because of Narnon, I could tell you that I live with no regret. This is a really big one, people. I live with no regret because I worked the program and I know I couldn't fix my son. He was in and out of the hospital. And in his case, sadly, I was advocating for Ben when he wanted help. I was there for him and I still couldn't save him. But I have no regret. I'm not rolled up in the corner because I lost him. Don't get me wrong, losing my baby boy, I said the shelter was the hardest thing. I didn't even get into him living on the streets and walking away while he's in the rain with his garbage bag and I'm coming to my nice warm home. I thought that was the hardest thing. The hardest thing was losing him. But the reality is addiction can be fatal and it effing sucks. It really does. We would end our videos where there is breath, there is hope. And if your loved one has breath, there is hope. Don't let go of that hope. And also remember that you have no control over what they do. You can't fix them. But please, please, if anything that you get in these meetings, know you're not alone. Know that you are worth it. And you know what? It's hard work. Working the steps and using your tools in Narnon, it is freaking hard work, but it is worth it. I had the greatest loss of my life, and I am going to continue to advocate for those who can't advocate for themselves. And I'm just going to wrap it up quickly. I am doing a speakers event. Luke, who will be speaking to you next, is also one of the speakers for the speaker event. It is February 15th. It is in Brampton, Ontario. If you're in the area, it is Real Lives Touched by Addiction. You are not alone. And if you want more information, drop your email in the comments and I'd be happy to send you a link. And glad you're here. Thanks for listening. That's my share. Take care of yourself. Mwah. Where there is
Thanks,
breath,
Sandra.
there is hope, guys. Thanks.
Love you. Thanks,
Love
Love you.
Sandra.
Yes.
Mwah.
Thank you very much,
Thanks.
Sandra. So
Did
we'll
Luke
just,
make it on? I
Sandra.
can't see him here. Thank
yeah,
you.
he's here. He made it.
Okay.
So let's all just take a
Yay.
second to catch our breath and very grateful, Sandra, always
Thank
to
you.
hear and really glad that you have no regrets and none. Lots of us are shedding tears, but your strength is incredible, incredible, and I love you very much. So on that note, Luke, come on into the room. Bring a box of Kleenex if you have it.
Uh,
No pressure,
I
no
got one right
pressure.
here.
Okay, perfect.
Katja, hi everybody. I'm Luke. I'm an addict, alcoholic. Sandra, catching the last end of your share there. This hits home for me because while I'm looking at these squares, I see my mom. You know, I see my dad. I see my sister. My brother. I see all the family members that were affected. And ironically, I'm actually at a 12-step meeting right now. It's a beginners meeting. People are under a year of sobriety, and the meeting's all about them. As I'm sitting here, you know, I'm thinking about all their parents and their family members that are hoping that they're getting help right now. So yeah, Sandra, yeah, I was in tears there listening to you. I've never done this before, talked with um, people who are on the other side of what I was on. And I just quickly, I know I only got 15, 20 minutes, I believe it is. And thank you for the opportunity to do this. I'm happy I'm able to get here and just the courage that family members have to try and get their power back to help themselves. Because Sandra, you did say something. There's nothing my mom, nothing my dad, nothing my brother, nothing my sister, nothing my nieces, my beautiful nieces and nephews could have done to get me sober. The pictures of them, my mom curled up in the ball, nothing. And I didn't grow up I didn't want to be an addict or alcoholic. I didn't want to be in recovery. I just was a kid that was, you know, going through life, a lot of anxiety, got diagnosed with ADHD and a learning disability at 8. I heard the psychiatrist said your kid's stupid and he's not going anywhere. My trouble started in elementary school. My mom was probably, I don't know if you guys can relate with your kids, but she was probably in the principal's office about 1,000 times in elementary school and then in high school as well. And in high school, that's where the drugs started coming in and alcohol. And I remember when I had my first drink and was smoking marijuana for the first time in my life, I could breathe. I could finally be Luke. I could be who anybody I wanted to be. And I come from a loving family, mom, dad, Benny, my brother, my sister. We were taught good morals. My brother's a captain for Markham Fire. My sister's a teacher. We were all raised by the same parents. And I went down another path. There is some trauma involved in my story, sexual abuse from an older woman. But I just went down a path of trying to numb that pain with alcohol and drugs. And the worst thing about addiction is it comes out in very selfish ways. It comes out in these ways that I don't care about my family. Um, I've had fights with my mom. I've said the most nastiest things to my mom, my dad. Um, I've even physically one time in the past grabbed my mom, which I'm totally ashamed of. She was trying to keep the keys away from me, and I tried to grab them out of her hand and hurt her hand pretty good. And I didn't want to do any of that stuff. I wasn't waking up every day how I could hurt my family. And it finally got to a point. Why I love programs like this with you guys is my mom didn't find a program. My dad didn't find a program, and Al-Anon was there. You know, I'm in another 12-step program, and drugs is a big part of my story. Um, so my mom was always with that thing of if I can just do this, I can help them. If I can just do this, I can help them. And every time I would make these promises of okay, I'm gonna get it together, whether it was I was losing a relationship or having fallouts with family members, it's like my mom and dad and brother and sister always hung on the coattails of that hope that, you know, maybe I will come through. And the shoe always dropped. The shoe always dropped. Um, when I was younger, I went to my mom's side of the family for Christmas every year. We always got together. My drinking and drug use, I ended up getting into a fight with some family members, blew up that whole side of the family to the point that we didn't talk for about 6 years. And then finally, you know, I don't want to get into war stories. Um, I was the common denominator in all these problems. I didn't know how to ask for help. There was a stigma to it. I also thought asking for help was a big weakness. And around 2019, I had two severe blackout nights that landed me in a lot of trouble. I ended up in jail. Don't know what happened. Severely charged with many charges. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't pointing the finger when I was sitting in that jail cell. The first time in my life, I was really like, what am I doing with my life? I really need help. For the first time in my life, I could hear my mom's tears and cries for help. I could hear my dad's tears and cries for help. Um, and what I was doing to them and the people around me. And luckily, I got into a rehab facility, jail in 2019. Going through court, I got sober and was sober for 3.5 years. And through those 3.5 years, the big fight that happened with my mom's side of the family, I've made amends to all those people, and they're my biggest supporters today. Um, One thing that I can say my brother and sister had this is when I got sober in 2019, my brother and sister didn't talk to me for that first year. And I was so defeated where I kind of understood it. And what they finally did was they set these boundaries. My sister couldn't trust me around her and the kids because I was one of those people. Sandra talked about the walking on eggshells and being careful not to question certain things. I was that reactive person. If like any of my family members questioned something, I'd get very defensive and raise my voice and talk to them that way. And my brother and sister didn't talk to me for that year because they were kind of done hearing sorries. I would always hurt my family and just say sorry, and I didn't even know what I was saying sorry for. I was just so lost in my addiction and alcoholism. And finally, a year later, they came around. My mom and dad would tell them like what I was doing. And for the first time in my life, people are starting to see me take certain actions. And it was a 12-step program that saved my life, connected to a higher power, believing in something much, much bigger than me. But here we go with the shoe drop. And my mom isn't in a program like you guys are in a program. If I don't have a smile on my face the whole time in recovery, my mom's like, whoa, what's going on? I can't be human because as soon as she thinks I got a frown on my face, she starts digging into it. And if I don't say the right thing, she's like, something off here. And I did relapse 3.5 years later. I didn't deal with some of my trauma. But one thing I can say is my mom was the major investigator leading up to that relapse. Like she could call it in a heartbeat of how it was going, told me not to get into a certain relationship, and I ended up relapsing and getting put back in jail. I was already involved in a court case that wasn't done yet. And when I got put back in jail for the first time, when I called my parents, they said, Luke, we're not doing it. We're not doing it. You're going to have to figure this one out on yourself. We've already bailed you out 3.5 years ago and gave you that shot, and we can't do it. And I called a couple friends too, that a guy that was a surety through AA actually. And he's like, Luke, I can't do it, man. I can't do it again. I can't trust you. And I remember being so defeated getting off that phone, and I didn't want to be here anymore. I was waking up every day doing all sorts of sleeping pills and medications guys were getting. I was never a fentanyl user. So I was asking guys, is there fentanyl on the range? Can I get fentanyl? I was trying to check out. I wanted to end my life. I didn't want to be here anymore. And I read this book in there about this guy who found God in jail. And he was like a career criminal, an addict, alcoholic, into all sorts of stuff. And he found God in jail through a program. And I read that book, and there's this little prayer on the back, and it was January 18th, 2023. I got off my bunk. There's two other guys in that bed, in that cell. And I got on my knees by that window, and I said, God, either don't let me wake up tomorrow, or please just help me get the help that I need. And I said this prayer, got up in my bunk, tears rushing down my eyes. And the next morning, I didn't ask the guy myself for his medication in the morning to use. And a chaplain came by to give out books. His name's Chaplain Loyce. And he looked at me and could tell there was something going on. And I didn't even tell him that I was an addict or an alcoholic, but he poked me in the chest and said, Luke, you're worth recovery. We're going to get you out of here and you're going to start your life again. Come try my addiction program. And I got into that program with him. And the rest of the 2 months I was in Maplehurst, I started doing these programs and helping other guys that were in there too, because I had some experience with recovery. And a few weeks later, I was on the phone with my mom and dad, and my mom a couple phone calls we had, she was like, listen, I can tell there's some sort of change in you, and me and your dad been talking. We're going to bail you out. Off to rehab again. Got on the recovery path again, and that relapse ended up being a really, really big gift for me, because I've met a lot of interesting people. But my recovery today is a little bit different than it was before. I also see a therapist. I'm in my 12-step groups. I sponsor guys, and I do a lot of stuff in the mental health and addiction like communities in my city, with advocating, because whoever you guys are here for, with children or siblings, or the person in your life that's an addict, like, we are good people. We are good people. It's not, why the addiction, why are you messing your life up like that? It really is like, why the pain? Why does this person want to soothe themselves so much? And that's really all it was for me. But one thing I wish my mom and dad and my sister went to therapy. I do wish my mom got into a program like you guys, because as soon as I jumped onto this meeting and heard Sandra, I think about my mom. She was a loving mother. She was the one that showed up to the schools, showed up to all the doctor's appointments, was always there for me. But it took some years off of her life. My mom has aged severely from the stress that I have put her through. Her nerves are shot. She has PTSD, like, and all I can do is every day is just show up with my own recovery, show up, uh, be loving, have the coffee ready for her in the morning, and constantly commit to communicating with her of where I am, what's going on. Um, and my story is I just finished a trial from back in 2019. It just finished. It took this long, and they are asking for 7 to 8 years in prison. It was a couple of really bad nights. Um, really bad nights. And the way I look at it, the decision's going to come in June. Is if God's got a job for me to do inside there, that's where I'll go. And there's going to be a purpose for it. But if my work's to do outside here, this is where I'm going to stay. And one thing that's a gift, I told you guys about my brother and sister setting those boundaries and didn't want to talk, and just kept their space from me. Just few out September, my sister's son, Landon, came and asked me if I'd be his godfather. So, um, Sandra says, if there's hope in our bodies, uh, if there's breath in our bodies, there's still hope. There is so much hope, for whoever it is that's affected by this. But I can't say it enough that I wish my mom was able to do. I thank her so much for the love and all she knew. That's all she knew what she could do. I don't think anybody got a playbook at the start of life when you guys had kids or whoever you're involved with that said, okay, if this happens to them, this is how we deal with this. Like, I don't think the parents get that. I'm not a parent. And one thing I got to drive home, because I drive it home to my mom and dad anymore, all the time. This isn't your fault. This isn't your fault. Like, don't beat yourself up thinking, what could I have done? What could I have done differently? You guys tried your best. My parents tried my best. It's not your guys' fault. Just keep loving whoever it is, but take care of yourself. Because like I said, there's nothing my parents could have done and my family could have done to save me. It was until I hit a certain bottom, and sometimes that bottom is Sandra's experience. And I'm sorry to get emotional here with all of you guys, but it's near and dear to my heart. Take care of yourselves, love them, work this program, and if they can get into a program themselves, it will turn into a beautiful thing. But there's no guarantee that somebody like me is going to get well for anybody. I got to hit that bottom, and the bottom is not the external stuff. The jail thing wasn't the bottom. It's when deep down inside of here, I'm sick of living the way I'm living, and I finally can see what I'm doing to everybody. And if I could leave you guys again, I've already said it with one message. I got purpose today. Not every day is guaranteed. I'm an arm's length away from picking up a drink, picking up a drug. It all depends on what I do each and every day. Taking care of myself, working with other addicts and alcoholics, and I've never met an addict or an alcoholic who doesn't light up a room while they're sober and starting to get on the right path. And we become outstanding citizens to our communities when we clean up the wreckage of our past. I have people from my past in high school reach out to me on social media and they're like, what happened? Like, that is not the same guy I knew, but they always say, Luke, I always knew you had a good heart. I always knew you had a good heart. And I think just to finish this off quickly, I don't want to take up too much time, get to the end, is the biggest message I always want my parents to know, and I hope everybody in here knows you didn't do anything wrong. And take care of yourselves, love your kids. I love you guys for being in this program. I wish my mom would come try this out, because even though I'm sober, she still has she's always so zoned in on what I'm doing, and I just want her to be free. And so I'm so happy that you guys have found this program wherever you are in your journey, and thank you for letting me come speak for you guys.
Thanks,
Wow.
Luke.
Thank you
Amazing.
so much.
Thank
Thank
you,
you
Luke.
so much.
Luke. Thank you.
Thank you, Luke.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Great. Thanks last
Thank
minute
you.
for coming out tonight,
Big
Luke.
hug.
We really appreciate it. And yes, please give your mother our contact information. It's never too late. It's never too late. And one of our sayings is keep coming back, keep coming back. And there's a lot of us here whose loved ones are in recovery, and years later we still keep coming back.
Yeah.
So please extend an invitation to your mother.
Sandra, you'll be meeting her soon, so you'll have to talk.
I'm looking
Excellent.
forward to it, Luke. And you know what? My son passed away, but I'm still coming to the meetings. I said years
Yeah.
ago, I'm a lifer, because the tools that I've gained is not just for my son or anybody and my nephew's also an addict, it's for me, because it doesn't matter what we're dealing with in life. If we're not well,